you should be able to just stay wherever you're pulling up here. That should be. Please speak into the mic so the stream can hear you.
A lot of stuff like that. All executions I was doing there, I prefer the sports. Oh, good.
Yeah, this is a sweet
stuff, so I just could head down to the parking and sometime. So I got just going to record game loop up and running so you can do full matches and score and everything. The size of the underground parking took me by surprise. I went down there, I was like, oh, there's a what? It's like a mile, like underground. Yeah, so like, program on it's color coded, so that's the trick for Meta. Yeah, we're above the red. 6 months. I'm surprised
that services some of the games on the other side.
So some power up, big pickups, few weapons in there. And you're just flying over space, blasting cameras we should be watching out of the sky. So with the 5-second definitely more of like a higher motion. I was gonna ask that. I was like, it's not bad actually. I'm surprised they haven't had too many good playing simulations like this. I think like once you get the hang of how it feels, you're kind of anticipating where you're gonna be going, which like kind of eases the way your brain feels. Have you had no, not yet. It's actually less of an issue because it's a problem when you're closer to the ground and the ground is moving fast. Oh, sure. When you're flying through the air, you're farther away from things, so you don't really need the tumbling. It's like you don't really get sick from it. It's got to drive somewhere. Depending on the audience. Yeah, I'm aiming for like the people. So I'm never crazy movement mechanics. I told you everything you're working on. Look at that. I've been holding off on a playtest. I'm working to loop up and running, and now one day, and I will be smart in my UI today. By then, there's disconnecting the communication. I've been having fun with it. I don't like the paperwork crap. I just did learn developing as much as I can. Rams got a lot of patents now. Or not Ram, Mail. Arizona. Yeah. And they licensed it to one company in California for entertainment. That company, we're going to street view, kind of like their house in some of the residential area of LA. Yeah. Not too active, it's very good to tell. So, this is where someone said it now, blah, blah. So I tried it a long time ago, 20 years ago. I was looking at Japan's big old Docomo. They did an emerging tech thing, actually got integrated. But so early enough in the morning, you gotta sign a line and sign a waiver and put what shorts on your head, do the battery back, and like, if it hurts, turn this way, not turn this way. And then, but like, walk. You're like, all right. And then give your friend a remote control, because it's called remote control human. And you push to the side. No, I'm going to go. Time behind here. Yeah. You do it down, just like this. And then they can steer you. That's your feeling pain and losing the ground as you walk. And then you come back and you drive third and you got many commercial uses. You put your phone on the TV, and you put a racing game. And then recorder, you go plane behind your ear, depending on like this. Actually the same side. And then they put on a music video and they force you to bang your head. Like that. Like the name of the rock spirit. It was a big thing I can't remember. And that was the whole thing. But then, you can have your day. This would be lunch time, you're walking around, and you're everybody's books. You're like, holy shit, you grab the tables and don't fall. Yeah. Which is not a normal thing. Oh, fuck, what was that? Yeah. Wow. And then it doesn't happen again. It's your friend, either way, is super angry at you because it happened 4 times. He's like damage my brain, permanently. Yeah. That's from SIGGRAPH demo. So everybody's like, but yeah, and a vertical flashback that I put my guitar into a wall. and weapons. Clearly, the things that are used beside it. Earlier in the day. What's up, David?
Hello.
Did I tell you about that VR laser test that I did on my Apple? Yeah, it was the same kind of deal. What I was like, you're in VR, you're running through this environment, it's physical, and then at one point, me and this other dude just like full on, full speed, ran right into each other. We could see everybody else. I couldn't see them, we couldn't see me. Yeah. And I don't know. Yeah, like I said before, it's like you can go in there, you can have your, and then I was like, I went straight right to the up around my desk. Yeah,
Check. Hello, stream. Hello. There we go.
Welcome, everyone. We are about to begin. Anybody have trouble finding it? Anybody drive to the wrong city? Yep, yeah. I think this is a pretty awesome location for the parking and afterwards Yard House. You just got to make it across the sidewalk without freezing. Very nice. So welcome. This is VR and HCI. Who has never been to one of our meetings? How'd you find us? All right. Yep. That's a good way. Moving back here. Yeah, it'll be interesting in the summer. I think they do seating out there, so we might pull these blinds. We'll see. So welcome. We are a spin-off special interest group of the International Game Developer Association Twin Cities chapter. And this is what we're doing tonight. So this is our first time in this space and a little bit of extra logistics to deal with, but I think we'll get this down pat before you know it. And a little bit about our chapter and what we do. We want all of our events to feel safe and welcoming. Best seat in the house, we saved it. If you have any issues, talk to us, any of the organizers. If you're not comfortable, hit us up online. Email address there is the bottom of the slides, and Discord, if you're already on there, is where we do a lot of stuff too. Let me just do this. We are all volunteer. That is the board. And for not that much longer, possibly. We have elections coming up. I believe the voting will start in 2 weeks at our February meeting for the game dev group and continue for a month. No, I'm not sure.
It starts in 2 weeks, and we do.
I was right.
Nominations. And then it starts.
Something starts in 2 weeks.
Well, it's the end of nominations in 2 weeks,
Starts.
and then voting starts for the next month.
There you go.
And
Candidates in 2 weeks.
Potentially, yeah. Yes.
nobody knows.
Yeah.
But it's written down. Somebody wrote it.
Yeah. Mark knows.
So it's on our Discord. It's also on IGDA.org/governance. If you want to check there, but I'd start on the Discord. We're all volunteers, and it's not that we don't have any. It's that somebody thought they could get away with, send me a photo and I'll put it in the new slide deck. And so far, no. There's a lot of volunteers. We just don't have their pictures up yet. But if there's something you want to help out with, a specific event, even if it's already running smoothly, people always like to have help and backup. Or something new that you wanna get rolling, let us know, because we have special interest groups, and we'll get to those in a minute. Here is our regular schedule. We've now filled up all the Wednesdays. You are at the fourth Wednesday, VR and HCI. And first Wednesday of every month is Dev Play Games. And that's generally board games. How often do you have other video games? Or?
Occasionally, when people can bring whatever they want to play. So.
Yeah, if you bring the gear, set it up. The long-standing Game Dev meeting, it's been going on for decades now, is the second Wednesday. And third Wednesday is Twin Cities Playtest, if you have something in development, or you just want to see other people's stuff that they're working on and provide feedback. It doesn't have to be in a great polished shape. It can be early. So check that out. And all the stuff marked live streams on YouTube, including this. We got lucky. And Twin Cities Playtest. They're always looking for more games, like I said. Can be tabletop. Could be VR. Have you ever had a VR? Has that happened? That one's a little harder. You got to go in person, stick it on people's faces, but definitely doable. Yeah. That's a good idea. And Discord is kind of where everything happens now. So hop on there. One interesting thing to point out is if you're working on something, you can request a channel for your project, for your game, and have it on the server there and draw people to it, and not have to manage your own Discord server. We sell merch, and the proceeds go back to the group. Like I said, everything's volunteer. There's There's a new not-for-profit that we'll talk about briefly, but this is still right now the primary way that we raise some money. And venue sponsors. So we are at Rim 5 Studios, and let's hear it for them. For the folks that this is the first time, we were just last fall meeting over in St. Louis Park, and this is our first time in this new location, and I think it's gonna be great. Figure everything out. And then other events happen at Noble Robot, which notably is a co-working space. If you're interested in that, check it out, noblerobot.com/office.
We are searching for other venues potentially.
Yep.
So if you know of any, like your work or somewhere you know, like let us know.
That's a good point. Yeah. So kind of the base requirements are can fit people, has a TV, doesn't want to charge $500, $300, or some crazy minimum food order. Nothing wrong with doing it in a restaurant or bar. That would actually probably be pretty nice if the space is big enough. And now here's the new thing. If you haven't been to the game dev meeting, there is an actual fully registered not-for-profit now called NICE. I don't know how I did that. Called NICE Game Alliance. That I don't know the tax lingo. It's a something C, 501c. 503 C3. So if your employer or other business that you know of might be interested in, game developers, in our case, VR technology, AR technology, it's all tax deductible donations now finally. So that's kind of nice. And personal donations are welcome, one time or recurring.
There's a new channel on the Discord with more information about that.
Yeah, a lot of details for kind of the plans. Global Game Jam is in 2 days. Yeah. And if you're interested in that, there it is. The jam site is up on the globalgamejam.org site. I believe 40 people or so are registered.
Yeah, we got a lot.
But we have kind of an unlimited amount of space. I believe there's still more in-person space, but there's also unlimited space online, and people have done online and offline collab in the past. I won't be able to be there this year, so is anybody going that would be interested in just saying a couple words about VR logistics, like not punching people and glass surfaces? Anybody planning on going? In the olden days, like it was a huge thing to set up the Vives and not have trouble with their laser projectors. That's right. Yeah. There was props. There was wooden and foam swords with tracking. With the Quest, you can work off a laptop. It's more about finding a place to test and maybe a nice cycle to move back and forth. So maybe your desk is next to an open space kind of a thing. But if you're doing it, just speak up and tell people what space you need, and they'll get it for you. All right, community plugs. We got one from Robbie. Come on down. You got talking to the mic. Good try. Let me see if I can find it, though. It's in here, I swear. There it is.
Hello, I'm Robbie Halverson. I don't know, long time CG gadfly, I guess. I work for Boston Scientific, and we dabble in some vision systems, VR systems. And we have this system here that I don't actually know a lot about, but it came on my radar that we're getting rid of it. And so here I am saying that we offer this for donation to anyone that could maybe take advantage of it. It is it's a head tracking system and a 3D display hookup. There is no computer with it, but it would be a donation of everything you see in the pictures. There's a power supply. I was told today, but he wasn't sure that it's actually a battery supply, so it could be mobile. You don't have to plug it into the wall. But unfortunately, oops, sorry, Zach. Yeah. But hit me up if you might be interested. I can find out more about it, or you can do your own research on it. But yeah.
Is anybody familiar with this? Know what it is?
I know that there's a research lab at U of M that does like visualization stuff. I believe they have like a cave study for VR.
Yeah.
Could be the kind of constituency that's interested in this.
That's a good idea. I've already talked to, I've got some contacts at Century College that may, I don't know if MCAT, but yeah, actually Boston Scientific does a lot of work with the, with that lab.
Oh,
So
okay.
we're familiar with it, but it hadn't occurred to me to talk to them, so
They
great.
might have the toys they need already.
Great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We used to have sort of a relationship with them, didn't we, Zach? Or didn't,
That was, yeah, in the architecture department. They're all gone.
yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
That's where the,
But there is a separate computer science group that does cave and VR stuff.
Which my older sister researched there, which is why I know about it. So.
All right, let's get back to this. Quick plug here. I can't speak to it in detail, but Nice Games Club is a game dev podcast. Check it out at nicegames.club. And this I don't know at all. Has anybody got any details on this?
This is Sam's, Sam and another person. They do like a monthly
Every month.
acid jam. It's pretty cool. It's fun.
Yeah.
Check it out if you're interested in just making an acid for a
I
day.
think it's like usually the first weekend of the month,
Yeah.
is there a
and
theme or
I always miss it.
each month there is a theme?
Yeah.
Oh, so you're told to make a tree monster or something like
It's usually more vague than that, I think, but yeah.
happiness.
All right. Do we have any other plugs from the community? If you got a website or a video.
This weekend is also the Minnesota Pro Spiel.
Yeah.
Oh. No, you do. You do.
Why does that keep happening?
If you are not going to be at the Global Game Jam, how do I...
Control T.
I think it's hyphen I'm in. Nope.
Drop the .com and see what.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So it's so January 24th through 26th. So if you don't know what a Pro Spiel is, it's basically a tabletop board game prototyping conference. And so there are tickets left, I think, for either type of ticket, but you can either get a playtester ticket for like $20 and just go and playtest other people's games, or you can get a designer ticket for $70 and then you can show your own games and have people playtest them. Used to be cheaper. Used to feel like a no-brainer, but yeah, I think this is maybe the second or third time it's been the same weekend as the Global Game Jam, which is a shame. I was signed up for this already, so I'll be at this one.
Have you been before?
Yeah, I've been. So actually, last year was the first year that Minneapolis, or the Twin Cities area anyway, has two. So now there's like, they're offset by about 6 months. So there's Protospiel Twin Cities, I think was like in the middle of the year sometime. So like in the middle of summer or something. So yeah, I went to both of those last year. The previous year I had been to the Protospiel Twin Cities and then also Madison, and I think I went to one other one. So they're kind of all over the place. Oddly, the Midwest ones are all called Protospiel, and then on either coast, it's more common for them to be called Unpub. It's like unpublished game conference. They're not huge. Like it's just basically a really big ballroom full of 200 to 300 people. But there's just a lot of prototypes and games that you won't see. And then sometimes you see them later and you're like, wait, I played that before it had any art.
Are you a designer or a playtester this year?
I did get a designer badge, but I don't have anything exciting that I'm gonna have with. That's not true. That's not true. I have some prototypes that I'll have with me, but.
What's the crowd like Friday, daytime versus weekends?
It is definitely probably about half, but it's pretty good. I mean, like you can definitely find games, and it's not like there'll be, I'm guessing, 100 people there on Friday.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's good. It's a good time.
I got something I can speak to.
Come on down.
Just briefly.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you don't do it, I gotta do it.
Well, I'll do that too, but that's actually not what I was.
Something different?
Something different, yeah, actually.
Thread the needle here.
Yep, actually has to do with the sweet sweatshirt that I just got today from one of our engineering teams. So my name is Lucas Christ. During the day, I work as an HVAC professional. I'm an engineering manager at Daikin Applied. We make large commercial HVAC units, the smallest of which is roughly the size of a Cooper Mini, and the largest barely fits on an oversized semi-trailer. And one of the things that we've really started to get into this year is using VR for design reviews and for doing virtual builds and design for manufacturing, design for service analysis of our designs. So this is something that a couple people are kind of championing, and I'm trying to, I found out a couple people were doing this, and I'm trying to get everybody on board that I can. We actually just had a really great VR week at our engineering group where we had representatives from Toro and a couple other businesses that have really gotten into using VR as an aid for improving manufacturability in their products. So that's something neat to share there. And then the other thing that Trent thought I was going to speak to, and I also head up Midwest Mega Games. So if you guys are interested in board games or LARP, and you want to mash the two up in a one-day event of craziness and awesome, we host games that are, and we're shooting for 4 games this year, maybe 5 depending on how things go, how ambitious we're feeling. Our next one coming up is on February 2nd. It's the Sunday, February 2nd. It's called Phase Anatomy. It's an urban fantasy take on medical drama and things like that. But if you can imagine a board game with kind of role-playing elements for 30 or more people. Our last game and the first one that we ran was called Watch the Skies, kind of a cross between Model UN if aliens invaded. And that was just shy of 40 players. We had that at Wicked Wart Brewing in Robbinsdale. So that's where Phase Anatomy will be. And if you guys are interested, you can find us at midwestmegagames.com. Or if you want to talk about large boxes that move air, I'm here to talk about that too. Thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else? Going once. Going twice. Gone. All right. Let me close a few of these. And one just quick gut check to make sure I didn't miss anything. We just had CES, and you'd think there would be some exciting AR VR there. Did anybody spot any? In particular, I saw a lot of AR glasses. Not one of them couldn't run a custom app. Anybody see one?
I saw one on the, what was it? I can't remember which talk show, but one of the talk shows had somebody, like a YouTuber, come on from CES, like straight from CES. And so he had this bag, and he like pulled things out of the bag.
Did any of them run custom software?
No.
Okay.
Not custom software, no.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah, there was a lot of glasses. Like all of a sudden with AI here, everybody's like, put it on the glasses. Yeah, so historically, there's been like no processing on the affordable ones. You've got the high-end stuff, the HoloLens, the Magic Leap, the what are the pointy ones from Niantic? Snap Spectacles. Niantic's a different thing. And those all have dev kits, and you can get them and write software and deploy and use. But all of these other new things are straight to consumer, and historically have only been powered by a phone. Like literally, they're displays and nothing else. And one of the bigger ones, there's a cool historical artifact out here on the shelf, now called X-Reel, used to be called N-Reel, but people got so confused about the game engine and the glasses that they were sued and had to change. So now called X-Reel, which RJ pointed out is stomping on a game developer's name, but whatever. It's how many lawyers he got. X-Reel finally put a chip in there. It's a super low-powered Qualcomm chip, and literally the only thing it does is pin a virtual screen using hardware here so that you can look away from it as opposed to having it pasted to your face. And because it's finally on the glasses instead of the phone, the latency's low, like it should be, like a VR headset is, and people are super excited. That is the state of the art for consumer AR as far as I can tell, unless anybody saw something from China or anywhere that runs custom software, has a dev kit. I didn't see any. So just making sure I didn't miss it.
There's a car that can jump over potholes.
Sure.
That was cool. There's a controller that attaches to the back of your phone. That looks really cool.
All right.
We
All right.
also there were three on the stock show, and they were pretty cool. Like the probably the neatest one just looked like a regular laptop, but it has a roll of like screen.
OLED.
So you press a button and it like doubles the height of the laptop.
All right.
Has anybody ever made a vending screen that doesn't break in the first week yet? Like every time you see the foldy phones,
Yeah.
like within a week, it's people posting,
I think a percentage of them break, but probably some don't.
Have them and they had them for months or a year.
Somebody here's got to have one.
Why would you post it if it didn't?
No one has a phone.
I have a second screen, but it's not full.
I almost got the Pixel, but I decided to get the 9 Pro instead of the.
Like if no one in this group has a folding screen,
We're smart.
it says a lot about folding.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot about folding screens.
Well, I will say, as somebody that has worked with some of the teams that have produced those for Samsung, those are fiendishly difficult to engineer in a way that they will survive contact with consumers.
Yeah.
It is, you get people handing it to their 5-year-old and expecting it to survive, and they're going to sit there and flap it around.
Not even that. The first thing was people were like, "What's this film on here?" Yeah, you got film on here.
All right. Just quick check there. If there was something great, we would have thrown it on the screen, but guess not. So without further ado, we'll get to our main event, and that is RJ White. Come on down.
Lower this. All right. Hi, everybody. My name is RJ. I think this is my 5th or 6th talk I've given, which is my excuse for the kind of obnoxious Google Slides theme they got here. They had some new ones finally after like 3 years, so made use of them. So we're just going to jump right in. So this presentation is about a game that I've been working on for the last few years called Stabby that released for the MetaQuest platform at the end of last summer. And this is just kind of the key art for it, but done in an obnoxious black and white filter to match the slideshow. And Soaring Rock Studio is just the kind of game dev studio pseudonym that I use for publishing my games. All right, so the stuff I'm going to talk about tonight is about the development timeline for Stabby, basically just how long it took and kind of some of the milestones that happened along the way, what went well with development, what didn't, basically mistakes that I made, things that I learned from, and just stuff that I took to be like, hey, I did that really good, keep doing that next time. Just in general, what the process is like, getting signed with a publisher, working with a publisher, getting to the finish line with a publisher, developing a community, fostering it, and using that in your process of the development and for the marketing of the game, going to the next point. And then just a few kind of random offsides here and there. I think one thing I mentioned in like the blurb going out for it was like this 28-hour programming marathon I did leading up to the QA build. So we'll briefly cover that as well. I also figured out how to put GIFs in my slideshow, so there's going to be a few of those. All right, so to start off, again, my name is RJ. I've been working in VR, now that it's 2025, about 8 years now, professionally for about 6 of those. I've been doing a lot of retail, enterprise VR, medical, surgical simulations, like just a bunch of RAM stuff all over the board for most of that. But I also have been doing a lot of games on the side. I try to put out at least like 1 or 2 a year. But this one I've actually been working on for a few years now. And it is called Stabby. And so for those who haven't seen any footage of it or anything, I did get this trailer. So that was a very dramatic trailer that was actually produced by Live. If any of you are familiar with the software, they do like the mixed reality stuff for VR. They do like the MR kits that a lot of content creators use. Meta actually partnered with Live and with, I don't know if any of you are aware of Demo Akura, the content creator who does like a lot of like live motion capture videos of VR games. He does a lot of Blade and Sorcery, but he also did some Helldiver videos last year he was famous for. So he partnered with Live partnered with Meta to actually create this trailer for Stabby leading up to launch. And so I got to work with Demo. He's a really cool guy to work with. A lot of the dramatic shots that he made here, he actually modified Blade and Sorcery to run it so that he could live through it to kind of film some of these third-person shots, which I thought was really cool. Yeah, so this game released in at the end of July of last year. It is currently on the store for $9.99. Although if any of you ask, I'll happily give you a key for free. And then I'm just gonna kind of there we go. No, go back full screen. No.
You were talking about your history. What was your first game and platform for VR?
My first game, I'm just going to stick with that, was a game called Daylight Dojo for the Google Daydream View headset. That was one of them that you had to actually slip a phone inside. And so this was so early on in the process that you had to use like a Nexus 6P, or maybe it was the Nexus 6, I can't remember which one it was. And then you had to use another Nexus phone as like a prototype for the controller. It's because the Daydream View had like a very simple 3DOF controller you could use. So I turned that 3DOF controller into like a little sword. So I've always been doing violent video games. So in 2021, I had been working on a few other VR games, and I was actually in the middle of another project when I put together a prototype that I literally threw together like in 2 hours. And I think the reason I made this prototype was literally there was like some announcement about like Assassin's Creed VR had been pushed back again. And I was like, oh, well, I think I could make kind of a neat concept. So I posted a clip that I made in 2 hours, just a black and white scene of a character running up a building. I should have included it in the slideshow, I'm sorry. And then just jumping down and stabbing like a ragdoll character in the middle of the street. And it got like hundreds of thousands of views right away. And within 2 hours after posting a clip of that prototype, I actually got an email from a publisher that was interested in taking that idea and expanding it. So throughout that fall and winter, I had a lot of back and forth, passing paperwork back and forth between that publisher and a couple others that expressed interest. But I ended up going with the original publisher that first reached out to me to actually start development of Stabby the next year. And so it was a 6-month contract where they basically said, we'll go through these milestones, we'll get a GDD signed, and then we'll have the game come out in summer. Summer came around, turns out the publisher had no like internal contacts at Meta to actually make the game just like come out. So they spent a lot of time negotiating with Meta, talking back and forth about what the full game should look like when it actually comes out. And so the project got pushed into limbo and finally started back up at the end of 2023, thanks to Meta actually pushing to be like, hey, we actually want this game on the platform. Let's do what we can to get it ready. And they really helped kind of kick the publisher into gear and gave me reason to push to finish it at the end of last year, or the end of last summer, sorry. So the publisher in question is Rogue Games. I don't really have a slide for them here because I don't care that much. They didn't really put a lot of effort into marketing it when the game finally came out. It's a bunch of ex-IGN folks, like literally like some of the founders of that they do produce some really cool games, and it was really fun working with them at the beginning. They went through some hardships along the development process that kind of made it hard for them to support Stabby, so I don't fully blame them for everything that happened or anything like that. And they really did kind of help kickstart it, so I'm still thankful for their involvement in it. But yeah, so that's what this big kind of lull was in there for, was kind of all the stuff that was going on. And then we're going to jump right in to the development section. So we're going to go straight into the tech of Stabby. I used 2021.3 of Unity, just the LTS version. I think I started on 2021.2, and then I upgraded to 3L, the LTS. Started right from the beginning using Photon's Pun2 networking solution. I had been very, very familiar with that, having developed the game Firezone, and then also a couple other demos and prototypes I'd done before that, so it's just something I was familiar with. That's the main reason I picked it. If I were to go back, I'd probably still go with Pun again, or maybe even their newer solution, Photon Fusion, just because it's a really solid networking solution out of the box that keeps me from having to host any servers or do anything like that. They basically can take care of you for 20 concurrent users at any time for free during the development process. And then when you're ready to release, if the game is popular enough to even get over 20 CCU, it's like 99 for 100 CCU for a year. And then if it get more popular than that, like it's above 100 CCU, which means you're doing well enough to afford to pay a little bit more, then it's 99 a month for 500 CCU. And I did end up having to go to that tier when the game finally came out, but it's more than worth it. And yeah, like I said, if the game's doing well enough to have that CCU, it's usually doing well enough to make that monetarily worth it. But if I were a little more knowledgeable on the networking side of things, I may have developed my own server solution or something like that. I did start with the Hurricane interaction kit as far as like handling things for grabbing items or grabbing the ragdolls of characters, and even like grabbing and climbing on buildings and stuff like that. But I eventually moved away from that to mostly my own custom-made stabbing system. So a lot of the interactions in the game are just stabbing. You press a trigger, it summons a knife, you stab it into something to like move it or move your character up and down and climb around. And a lot of that physical kind of character controller system is based on from the same asset developer, their Hexabody system. So it uses those as the base, but it's very much customized. And I started this in 2021. I never updated Hurricane or Hexabody since then, and I know it's gone through a lot of changes since then, but a lot of the base is still there. I did use Microsoft's PlayFab system as a backend, mostly early in development to just sort of help with getting information and analytics from the testers, but also to kind of handle cosmetics and helping kind of award players for certain things. In the end, it wasn't really necessary on launch, and I could probably go back and strip it and probably need to because it doesn't actually get used right now. But if I made more use of some of the features PlayFab has, then I'd probably keep it. It is a pretty cool thing and pretty easy to implement, honestly. And then I use Discord. I'm sure everyone here has at least heard of it. It's a communication app where you can have personalized servers. So I've got a Soaring Rock Studio server where I invite all my Stabby players to join it, discuss the game, meet up with each other for private matches, stuff like that. And then TikTok's on there, the Chinese spyware app, because I use that for marketing. And a very large percentage of my players and audience came from TikTok. So I will go a little bit more in depth in that in the marketing slides later. So just a quick kind of target of what I was going for from the beginning is I wanted to do intense locomotion. This is kind of around the time Gorilla Tag was starting to ramp up in popularity in 2021. So I knew that players, especially the younger ones, could handle it a little bit better than the current, at the time, market really could. So I knew it was something I could get away with more. But then also like I said, my very first game was a little violent, so I liked having something kind of satisfying and visceral, specifically in VR. Like the stabbing motion, as violent as it sounds, is something that in VR is just very easy to kind of mimic and pull off, and it makes sense to everybody when they do it. So in that sense, it's a very easy to learn, difficult to master skill curve. Yeah. How lean are the good guys? That's up for interpretation. And then, as well as like making it so there's a skill curve to it. So like if you played with mechanics a lot, you could get really good and do a lot of cool things that other players couldn't. But then also I want it to be multiplayer. So I want it to be something where people could compete with each other to be, the best assassin, to get around and do all the cool parkour stuff that they like to do, but in a multiplayer lobby together. So jumping right in with kind of what went good, what went bad during the development process. Really early on, community building was really successful. This is when TikTok was really ramping up as a tool for indie developers and artists to sort of get an audience really quickly. So I went from literally 0 followers on TikTok to like 25K in the course of 2 weeks, just from like multiple TikToks blowing up, like just showing clips from the game, like really early on footage. When I had my Discord server at the start, I had about 500 people in it from my previous games. And so a lot of those people were really big help in testing and then getting multiplayer footage to post to TikTok. And that's where it really blew up. And so I would post the link to the Discord in those TikToks. And so those millions of views I was getting, I was converting it into thousands of users from my Discord server, which again, I'll go over a little bit more on how useful that is later in the marketing slides. And then the collaborations were really fun. That part of development I really liked. I worked with the Ghost of Tabor devs, Sushi Ben, Smash Drums, just some other developers where we basically collaborated on some cosmetic items. Like if you owned their game, then you got a free item in Stabby. And so that seemed to excite the player base as well. But it was also just really fun for me working with other developers that I admired. This is pretty successful in the store. In the first couple weeks, it reached the top 25 on the top selling chart, and it stayed there for a little less than a month. So I was really happy with the numbers it put up. And then as I put in there continued success, the reason I put this kind of random seeming date in there, like from September to November, is I wanted to show that this is not a period with any major sales or holidays that would really indicate giant spikes in sales. Just kind of to show that it had a tail on it, just naturally, like from old TikToks I posted either re-blowing up again or people naturally sharing the game. It was constantly getting sales and views and reach just from existing on the store. And then the QA process, which pretty infamously had been kind of arduous for other developers, actually was pretty painless for me personally, just because I did a lot of preparation, which again, I'll go into later when I talk about that 28-hour marathon development session that kind of set that up. Things that didn't go as well during the process were just some of the roadblocks I had with the publisher and the negotiations with Meta. I definitely feel like I could have finished the game, so to say, a couple years earlier if I had just kind of taken that momentum I had and gone with it. And then the game did come out literally 1 week before the big merge with AppLab, which for any of you who are unaware, AppLab previously was a different section of the Meta store that was unlisted apps, like basically early access test games, just things that were generally deemed unproven by Meta, and 99% Gorilla Tag clones. And basically, right when the store merge happened, all those Gorilla Tag clones kind of hit, along with all those other kind of knockoffs and really short games. And Meta didn't really do a lot to differentiate that on the store page for users. So when people logged on, they were getting hit with thousands of these random knockoff apps instead of like recent games that developers had been spending lots of time making. Sometimes even their own first-party games were suffering. I didn't really solidify the game design loop for the multiplayer early on in the stages of development. That went through a lot of changes with the publisher and just my community in general. If I had really nailed that down earlier in the development process, like in that first year, I could have given myself a lot less headaches later in the development process when I was making the gameplay loop, the different game modes. And then just mentioning publisher again for third time there, if it's not clear, it didn't go well for me personally. And like I said, there was some areas of that were out of their control, but also just in general, I learned a lot of lessons from, in general, working with a publisher. Like I have a lot of industry expertise that they bring to the table, yes. But at the end of the day, a lot of solo or indie developers probably have a little more know-how of the VR industry than a lot of the kind of old school publishers have at this point in time. Now that is changing, especially in the last few years. A lot more development studios that had early success on the Meta Store spun off their own publishing branches and stuff like that. So there's a lot more options out there, and Meta is doing some self-publishing as well still, even though things haven't been going well for them on the first-party front. So there are better options out there now, but just early on, I kind of learned that like going the old school route for indie publishers wasn't the best fit for VR at the time. All right. And so before we jump into the community section of the slideshow, any questions on like the first half that we've seen so far?
RJ, I'm almost the dumbest guy in the room, as you know.
It's okay. Not true.
Could you describe the gameplay just a little bit? Your trailer was gorgeous. I have no idea, like...
And that's fair. My original trailer, I feel like that I made was a little more clear, and I probably should post that in there too.
Who am I and what am I doing is sort of what I'm listening to.
Right there in the name, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Multiplayer, who are you stabbing?
So,
Business guys.
and that's actually, a great question.
Publishers.
I remember your early trailer.
So it's a nutrition-based game. No. All right, so I'll turn the volume down on this while this is playing. So this one kind of gives a little bit more sense of the actual gameplay of it. The trailer I showed up earlier was like a very flashy trailer made by, like I said, Liv and Meta, where they wanted something that was very dramatic, which I feel like did kind of match the mood of the game, whereas this shows a little bit more of the actual, what the real gameplay looks like. So basically, literally all the interactions in Stabby, you climb around by stabbing. You don't grab onto walls, you stab walls. You stab other players in multiplayer. There's game... Yeah. So, in the main classic multiplayer game mode, there's these NPCs throughout the map. Some of them are marked as targets, some of them are not. You basically have to run around, figure out which ones are your target, and then the best score you can get is by climbing up really high and getting what's called a drop kill. So you basically get as high as possible, drop down, and get a high intensity kill on your targets. So these are some of the single player levels where you get time bonuses for those, really dramatic kills and stuff like that. But that's the basic gameplay of it, is literally you just stab everything. Friends, enemies, the environment, just, yeah. Yeah, of course.
The big, really good difference there was that you had a whole bunch of point of view shots in your video.
I know.
Showing me what it would be like to play the game as opposed to the...
Exactly, which is why yeah.
It was just like, wow, doesn't this look cool? Wouldn't you like to pay money to watch this?
Exactly. So, yeah.
Very cool.
How many game modes did you have?
What was it?
How many game modes?
There's currently 3. So there's classic, like I said, with the targets are all placed around, and then there's also drones that float around, kind of catch players. Especially if you stick around at the ground level a lot, the drones will catch you. So it encourages players to stay climbing on top of buildings instead. And then there is a King of the Hill mode where the floor is lava, and then each of the buildings has a randomly placed point zone on it, and you basically have to figure out which one's the current zone, stay in it, and prevent other players from staying in it, gaining points. And then there's this is a last minute addition, a stab tag mode inspired by Gorilla Tag, where basically you stab other players to tag them, and then their color gets drained from them, and you basically try to be the last player with your color. So, and that's how you get points. But you can. It usually doesn't go well. You could kind of ride a drone like that. You could stab onto it, and as long as you stay out of its camera, like you could actually hang on to it and ride around the map like that, which a lot of players would like to do. It's kind of like playing rodeo. Yeah. Alrighty. So a big part of Stabby's development was just learning about building the community up and using them for marketing, as well as rewarding them for being a part of the community. So like I said before, a lot of my community was built from the TikTok videos that blew up. So I was constantly redirecting those videos or video viewers to my Discord server, being like, boom, you saw this cool game. You want to try it right now, right? For free? Boom, be an early tester, come to the Discord, or see early footage. And I had to have little Google forms they could fill out and potentially be an early access tester in the next wave of tests. At the peak of testing, I had about 5,000 early alpha testers, which on Meta's backend, they really don't like you having that many alpha channels set up because it's about 100 per alpha channel, or it used to be. Now it's 200, but it used to be 100. So that was a little difficult to manage, but it really kept the community active, which during the development process really helped ramp up for marketing to full release. And then just in general, like telling players something very vague or basic on my TikTok videos or any marketing that I did, saying like, hey, if you want to learn more, you want to see release dates, you want to see what the next big release is or update, come to the Discord community. Because once they're in the Discord community, they're not necessarily a captive audience, but they're a lot easier to get a hold of because you can do a big ping and just get a hold of all your users at once. I have given talks specifically about almost just about marketing previously, so a lot of those points that I've talked about before kind of get reiterated here. And then same thing on the opposite side. The marketing is built from the community, so getting those multiplayer gameplay clips, getting people to submit clips from like multiple perspectives is really big too. It makes the game seem a lot more alive and social that way. I'd have competitions where like, hey, you get the coolest clip of like a drop kill or something, and you get a special role in the community, or you'll get like a copy of the game for free when it actually comes out. And that really helped me get a lot of really cool action shots that would have been hard for me to get on my own, or lucky if I was. And then also just getting the community on your side, just basically having them evangelize the game for you by making them a part of it, the process. Like you give people special roles for helping you test it, for submitting cool clips, making them mods or helpers so they can help manage it for you too. Anything that makes them feel a part of you and your game really helps them go out and spread the word for you. They'll happily go to other comment sections of videos and be like, hey, this stabby game is like in testing. It's really cool. And I really like working with the developer because he made me a mod, stuff like that.
Can I ask another question?
Go for it.
You've given wonderful talks in the past about your engaging communities like this.
Thank you.
Did any of that spill over, or was this
Oh,
all brand new?
absolutely. I honestly, I think two of those talks I gave while I was in development of Stabby. Like, it was still kind of like, I wasn't being like super public about the development of it. And then when it was finally time to like get close to launch, it was like, hey, by the way, all that stuff I was telling you guys about, I have been actively using on Stabby. So another part of just engaging your community is, especially with the Discord server, is a big one here, is telling them about updates coming out. You know, they always want to know when the next new piece of content is. Doesn't matter if it's months from now or if it's tomorrow. They want to know when, and they will bug you about it every day on the way to that deadline. So they'll keep you honest. So just letting them know that, like, hey, there's an update being worked on. It has this content in it, these new game modes, stuff like that. Just anything to keep the community kind of alive and thriving. Like, even if you don't have any actual content to update, anything useful to say, just like popping by your own Discord server for once in a while, pinging some people, replying to people, just helps keep the community going. And then running like events, like I said, little competitions where people can get codes for the game. A big one that I did with Stabby and still do is secret codes that are actually in the game, where they're little like, you know, crypto puzzles, not like crypto the currency, like crypto like the, yeah, thank you, cryptography, where they're like secret puzzles like in the messages, like certain letters are bolded, and if they put them together, it's a message. If they put a number related to that message in game, they get a special skin or cosmetic. And so that's a big way I've kind of kept the community going, is with those secret codes, because it takes maybe like 10 or 15 minutes to set one of those up in game, post it on Discord, keeps them busy for like a week. So, and then obviously fan art. What I posted here is just some of my favorite pieces of fan art from the game. These are all things that other people have made. This one has become a little emote in the server because they made a GIF where like the eyes move around. It's called the Stabby Cat. I have an artist who loves doing these little dramatized versions of the Stabby characters, which is a little medieval looking, but I kind of dig it. And then this is my favorite, is last year somebody dressed as the Stabby character for Halloween. Yep. That was like my kind of crowning moment for the game. I was like, yes, I made it. And then another part of, this is a bit of the community building as well, is kind of figuring out what games that my players like to play, and then reaching out to those developers, those peers, and be like, hey, like, I would just like to include a little Easter egg in there. And so, for instance, talking with the Ghost of Tabor devs, they came up with this one. They're like, hey, what if you do like a really cool combat knife with one of those like Damascus steel sort of patterns on the blade, but the pattern for the blade is actually the topological map for Ghost of Tabor. So that's what that actually is. They're the ones that came up with that idea. I loved it in implementation. And then drumsticks for like the Smash Drums collab. One of my favorites is the Sushi Ben developer. I don't know if any of you've seen it. It's kind of like an anime style kind of slice of life game on the Quest. But he actually sent me the direct files for his sushi knives that he used in the game. And he's like, here, just have them. Just put them in Stabby. Just let them use the knives to stab people instead of slicing up fish. And I was like, sure. Like, thanks. And then this one was one that I came up with just because they had the same publisher. So I don't know if any of you have heard of the game Sprawl. It's a boomer shooter kind of roguelike. It's on Steam. It's really fun. A lot of kind of parkour, kind of a similar vibe to Stabby. So when I reached out to them, I was like, hey, I really like those kind of robot, SMG dudes you have. And he was really cool. He's like, yeah, boom, here, have the file. And so I turned that into like a little character that the players can actually unlock and play as one of the characters from Sprawl. All right. Any questions about the community section that we just went through? Yeah.
Not really a question, just I can't help but think of one of my favorite games that involves stabbing, which is Party Hard. I don't know if you've ever talked to those developers.
That's fair. Maybe I should reach out to them. Yeah, I would happy to. Yep. So I was doing, as far as like setting up the community goes, that was all me. Like I mentioned, part of what helps evangelize your community is when they want to help, you let them. Obviously, you have to do a little bit of vetting, make sure they're not complete weirdos, but there'll be, more often than not, there'll be somebody that's, has just some sort of like power trip that's just like, yes, I will moderate for you and be on your server for 12 hours a day, completely for free, so I get a special colored role in your Discord server. So, and during the development process, a lot. I'd have Discord out in the background as I was developing, as like code was compiling or build was being made. I'd slip in there, give some updates, work with the community, see what they were liking and not liking about updates. I was a lot more active. Since release, honestly, not a lot. Like I drop in there like a few times a day, maybe just to make sure it hasn't devolved into utter chaos. But I don't have to manage it that hands-on.
Are you doing sort of like a sample review when you're going through? You saying you have like thousands of people on your Discord?
Yes.
Are you just sort of sampling sort of what's going on, or are you actually like reading all the threads?
So I try to keep up with like the last like couple hundred messages or so whenever I pop in there. If like there's been an active conversation going, like scroll up, make sure like nothing weird is being talked about or said. And then also I have a special channel just for suggestions in there. So people post their suggestions in there. And so I'll kind of know like generally what people are liking or not liking about updates and feedback and stuff like that, which I do have another little slide in there later on about that. We'll cover. Yep.
What's the biggest challenge or pain in the ass as far as the community marketing?
Definitely keeping kind of expectations realistic, I'd say, as far as like what I'm able to do as a solo developer. I would get plenty of people that would come in there and be like, oh, like this game is going to be so huge. It's going to have this feature and this feature, right? I'm like, those features you're talking about are things that other studios have done with like dozens of people and years of work. This is a game I'm trying to release, like in a few months. So
You're literally all by yourself.
yeah, I did have some art in some of the levels I contracted on, and he is listed in the credits. That was really important to me, as anybody that like hands-on worked with the game got a credit in there. But yeah, as far as like the actual like coding, setting up the game, getting it ready for publishing, making it, that was all me. Yep.
Of this like audience, what's kind of like the average person, like demographically, psychographically, and then was there anything surprised you of like where people came from, or I guess other games they play, VR, console, PC, like who's kind of your user?
That's a great question. Honestly, I'll full on admit it. I think a lot of the early people I was getting in the community were Gorilla Tag players, which range anywhere from 10 years old to like 20. So it was a very younger crowd. That's something I had to get used to early on in the process was, you go from, I had a community of about 500 people, maybe I'd get a few messages a day about like whatever game I'd put out like a couple months back or something. It went from that, where that was a lot of people like in their 20s, like what used to be the average VR consumer, to all of a sudden I was having to communicate with literally thousands of teenage boys a day, which sounds really weird. I don't want this taken out of context, please. But getting used to like kind of their style of talking, the lingo of like, the Gen Alphas, it was like very much a challenge for me personally. And that's where the helpers and the mods really come in handy, is you have some people that are already a little more knowledgeable on how to bridge that gap of like professionalism, but also like feeling like you're one of them, so to say, even though I'm twice their age. So.
All the horrors of chat rooms from back in the day are coming full circle now.
Yeah. Especially on Discord.
You said you had a suggestion form. Can you give an example of a good suggestion and a bad suggestion?
That's a great question.
Do you want us to keep these for the end to let you do the lessons?
That's totally fair. I will get to that really quick. I'll literally pull up my suggestion channel and just like read some of the last few and see if any of them are any decent. So for instance, you'd be kind of surprised at this. Somebody actually, one of the most recent ones is B-haptic support for like the B-haptic vests. So if anyone's actually done work implementing those before, their SDK is actually pretty easy to use. I'd be happy to if they sent me like one of their newer ones. So.
Does it really feel like you're getting stabbed?
You say that, and the one game that I actually implemented their SDK on was like a zombie game where zombies were clawing at you. So I actually had it like it would slash in the pattern of the zombie claw on your chest. And so it didn't feel like you're getting slashed. It felt like you're getting weirdly tickled by multiple people at once. it was still pretty cool, like tech-wise.
Just imagine your intestines are being pulled out.
Yep. So I would get, people would also use it for bug reports too, honestly, which they're not supposed to, but it helps because I always check that. So I'd get a lot of bug reports in there. People asking for bigger map or more details, like from previous like beta maps. See, adding. All right, let's see. Birds that fly around and you can stab them. That's not terrible. Let's see. A lot of people ask for like custom mod support, which I do want to do one day, but it's just something a little tech-wise a little difficult. Asking for the new update to come sooner. What if you partnered with the new Scream movie and then Ghostface kills random people? Election day, put one person into power as a mod for the server and he can get impeached. I don't know. They're not all gold, but they're not all bad either.
Do you ever engage with them in that channel, or is it more like, oh, I'm just going to see what they're
No,
posting?
I straight up tell them, like in other channels, like I'm just listening in the suggestions channel. Sometimes I'll reply to one that's like either really, really stupid or really, really good and be like, hey, or even one that I'm currently working on, they just didn't realize it. I'll be like, hey, that's actually going to be implemented in an upcoming update. Yeah, one that I was kind of surprised by is in the multiplayer lobbies, there's some like server owner controls. So whoever's like the server host can like change the game mode and stuff like that. One that was really popular early on is they actually wanted to turn off the drones that are at the ground level, like scanning players. And so I was like, oh, okay, that's not something I even thought about or something I cared about for launch. But I started working on right after launch because a lot of the players that bought it were like, hey, like I just want to turn those off so I can goof around with my friends in the city, like in a private lobby. So I quickly got that implemented in there. Alrighty, so jumping in, and this is just be some kind of broad lessons I learned from the whole development process from beginning to end. Some of the lessons I learned the easy way, that community is everything for indie games. This is probably no surprise to any of you out here, but basically building that community, having people that you can advertise to and talk to and test and work with is huge. No man is an island. You can't just make the coolest game ever completely on your own and then just release it, with no marketing, no buzz whatsoever, and just become a huge hit overnight. You need to work with the people that are going to play your game during the process. Reaching out to other developers and content creators, honestly was more helpful than some of the stuff that the publisher's like paying to have done like on release. One of the things the publisher paid for at launch was to actually have a local TV interview done over Zoom with like a weird like small town tech show in like California, like near where they live. And so I actually had to hop on Zoom like early in the morning and do like this over like video call with a producer who's like, okay, so we're just gonna edit you in and make it look like you're talking with the host. So just look really enthusiastic and like say her name a few times and stuff like this. And I was like, okay, sure. And that stream, as far as I know, like that like episode or segment that they did has still not seen the light of day. And that was last summer. So I don't know if that even became anything. But talking with the the content creators on TikTok and YouTube and Twitter really kind of paid off as far as like getting more views and getting more people interested in the game more than any of the other stuff did. And lessons learned the hard way. I'm bringing up the publisher. Just finding one that kind of has experience with like what you're trying to do, what you're trying to make. The publisher I went with, very much like I said, one of the other games they made was like a boomer shooter, and a lot of their audience was a bit older, like playing kind of more retro PC games, which is nothing wrong with that. I know there's a lot of you out there, but they yeah, but they were again just maybe not the best fit for Stabby. And then as I mentioned before, some of the game design stuff, just playing that GDD better, making that game loop more obvious in the design process, at least for myself, would have made it easier for the actual development process of making the satisfying game loop that players liked. And then this is a big one I learned along the way, kind of addressing, again, the suggestions channel thing, is a quote from Bill Hader. when people tell you something is wrong, they're usually right. When they tell you how to fix it, they're usually wrong. And in the interview, he talks about this and he goes into more detail. But if it's not obvious from the quote itself, it's basically like someone can tell you if something doesn't feel right, if something isn't fun. That's instinct to them. Now, their suggestion for like how to fix that, like what game modes to do, or like how to like make characters more powerful, or like make people fly, stuff like that, or like stuff from their other favorite games, that's not always gonna be the right answer to fix it. But it does give you an idea of where the pain points are and what's wrong. And so generally, I think a developer will know more on how to fix those issues than the people that are giving the suggestions. But it is important to listen to those suggestions to know that there are those pain points, that you can't just be stubborn and dig your heels in and be like, no, I'm making the game this way. Sorry, you're wrong. Like, no, like there's an in-between there. Obviously they're not always right about if something's wrong, but more often than not, they can tell you when their instinct is telling them that something doesn't feel good. And then this is just a bonus, fun little email I got from one of my meta reps during the process of developing the trailer. If you can't read it from there, it says, everything looks good except the trailer has an excessive amount of stabbings. I know that's what the game is about, but are you able to trim down slightly on the violence? So, again, just listening to feedback is important, but, adjusting it.
Just make them pressing the
Yeah, that would be better.
Considered like an alternative mode where you slap people with the fish.
Maybe.
fish slap.
Alrighty. Ooh. Nope, not that one yet. No. All right, we're going to start from the beginning. No. Oh, now it's full screen. Thanks. Yeah. Yes. Engagement. Lesson. Feedback. There we go. Okay. Just a quick on my experience with QA. Like I said, it was not super painful. The biggest thing was just having that kind of beta build ready where I went through, and that's kind of what the big section of that 28 hours was I literally had a lot of Red Bull and maybe a few prescription medications that helped me get along and survive, basically just getting as many of those kind of meta kind of guidelines and things that they want, very specific about like how the home button should act, the game should pause, or like not show your hands in certain situations. So just taking care of as many of those ahead of time is going to save you a million headaches when going through any sort of QA. Now, as far as I know, they don't do QA anymore, so it's not very useful. But I know for some of like their managed titles where they started them like a couple years ago, something like that, they're still doing them for those. But also just in general, QA is useful for everybody. And if you have the budget for it and you're putting some serious effort into a game, it's worth doing some QA. And then, my experience with them, I was very polite with them. I was very courteous. I didn't really use professional language. I was very kind of over the top, enthusiastic, talking with them, making sure every interaction with them was positive. Like, even though they're telling me like a dozen things were wrong with my game, I was like, thank you so much for telling me. That's great. And just kind of having them on your side throughout the process. It really helped me out because they would go to bat for me with meta with like certain issues. They're like, oh yeah, we talked with RJ and this is what he said, but it was that issue or performance thing or whatever. And, we recorded it as being this, but honestly, it doesn't affect the experience that much or stuff like this. Like, it just really helped working with those guys. And I didn't put them in the slideshow, but it was Keywords Montreal. They do their own like game development too, but they also do QA services on the side that Meta actually paid for. And so they were really cool to work with, and to the point where I was like, hey, like, you guys helped me literally make this game. Give me the list of people that did QA on this, and I'll make sure they get put in the credits, because they were just awesome guys to work with.
So I'm being dumb again, but you just said it. The them was the group that Meta picked to do the QA.
Yes. The company is called Keywords, and then Montreal, I think, is just the branch of Keywords. Yeah. And really cool people to work with. They really helped me make sure it came out the door as polished as possible.
Was that something that you opted into, or was that something that when you submitted it, or the publisher submitted it to Meta, they said, you need to have it QA'd?
Yeah, that was something that Meta initiated. Meta was like, this game needs to go through QA to launch in the store. And so literally before that week that I talked about where like the big store merge happened, every game that arrived on the store had to go through some form of QA. Every game. And then a week later, none of them. So, yeah. All right.
Did the QA team handle your locomotion, or did they have to select people that could?
That's a great question. My meta rep, he was actually nervous about that. He's like, I want to talk to these guys because I want to see, like, are they like big VR people? Are they going to be able to handle this, or is this something where like they're going to have motion issues or whatever? And they got back to them and they're like, no, some of these dudes like play gorilla tag for fun, casually, like, on the side. They're going to have no problem with it. And so the QA team, the first build they ever tried, they're like, hey, this is like really intuitive motion. We jumped into it. It's no problem for us whatsoever. But there are motion sickness options in there. There's tunneling. There's a static kind of hood that can go over. There's snap turn, smooth turn, artificial turning off entirely. So even though it is a very intense locomotion game, I did try to cater to others. And then my wife advised against this slide, but basically a question I get a lot is like, hey, how did it do? And the answer to that is, to anybody going to the bar, first round's on me. And that is only because I just got the round of holiday sales from Meta, literally today. All right. And so this is kind of just what's next on the plate for Soaring Rock Studios / me in general. I'm still working on VR games. I have still very violent. This one on the side on the left is literally called Hyperviolence. It's a game where I developed a system with the skinned mesh renderers in Unity, where you could basically displace the individual vertices based on like where you're punching them. So you're literally putting dents and holes in like the physical mesh of the enemy, and then there's like organs and bone layer on the inside that get bloodied up, so you can actually like see like the different organs you're hitting as you're punching them.
About that, 'cause I saw a GIF that you posted, and it looked as if you used a brick to smash off your own arm, and then use it to pick up the brick, and then.
Yes, there's like a kind of phantom limb system there. Yeah. I'll see if I can actually get that, because I do have like the full version of it. Oh no, I don't think I can even click on it. Boo. Never mind. My header image on Twitter is literally a tweet from Roni Abovitz, the Magic Leap founder that took millions of dollars from Saudi Arabia, and he tweeted a response to like one of my very violent game dev clips and just said, "This is not good for the world." And then on the right, that's just actually a flat game I'm doing, just like a WebGL kind of online co-op dungeon crawler sort of game that I'm working on. But that's sort of just in the kind of prototype process still. So, but still working on VR, still doing game development in general, taking a lot of the lessons that I learned from Stabby development and applying them to these games as much as I can.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
Can you like pull out a rib and then stab? It's like a callback.
That's a good idea. I like that. I do like that.
Put that in your Discord.
All right. So, any questions about anything you guys have seen so far? Yeah.
Something I was wondering about is early on in the deck you put the timeline and you said that there was that pause because of stuff with the publisher situation in Meta. So it kind of, this is first just, is it correct that you kind of paused development during that period?
Yes.
So then what I'm wondering about is it sounded like this was a project where online reaction, it was based on day one online positive feedback that you started fleshing this out, and you talked about all this community building. What happens to all of that initial effort during the pause?
That's a great question. Yeah, it did affect it tremendously. A lot of people in the Discord got impatient. I would try to give them, boilerplate responses like, hey, like I'm working with a publisher here, I'm working with Meta, trying to get development kind of restarted as soon as possible. By that time, the milestone payments from like the publisher and everything from the contract had long run out. And so it went from, hey, I thought I was going to quit my job to work on this game full time, to, okay, this has got to be like a way back on the back burner sort of project as I do like actual contract work that pays the bills. You know, I got 4 kids at home and a house. I got stuff to pay for, so I couldn't just wait around for the publisher and Meta to figure things out. So yeah, that did affect kind of the hype and the kind of momentum going into development, which is why I was very thankful that leading up to the actual launch, Meta put a lot of effort into, you know, content creators, making that trailer with Liv, stuff like that. Meta was really hyped about getting the game kind of re-energized in the community.
Just one comment, the hierarchy of design with the colors and the contrast, I was never thinking, where do I look? Where do I go? And with bright characters
Thank you.
to guide where you're going, there's so many ways that this could have been overstimulated with textures, and it feels like it's minimalist done right.
Thank you.
Nice work.
Yeah, that's very intentional. And then also just from like a violence perspective, like it's a lot easier to stomach violence against like very plain, featureless businessmen with sunglasses on than it is like fully.
My mom thought that was Joe Biden.
So this like shot is taken from like a live like Unity editor shot, and the way I have the NPCs loaded in is they randomly load in every scene with different outfits on. And the first one that I recorded when it didn't have glasses on actually looked too much like Obama. So like I was like, I don't want that to be a weird thing. So, all right, go ahead. Yep.
I was curious about your graphic design. I noticed across the games you showed a definite style of sepia tone color grading. Is that a kind of a house style for you, or?
So actually, I obnoxiously did that for this slideshow. This slideshow kind of had that like sepia tone as like a template color. So like I tried to make all the assets match that sepia tone look. If I kind of show you like what the store page actually looks like for Stabby, kind of get a better idea. So like for Stabby specifically, it's very much black and white with the accents of red, and then color from like the other players, or like red outlines from the NPCs being targeted, stuff like that.
I do like it. That wasn't my point, but I was just curious if that was. Do you have kind of a house style across?
No.
I see it, but it's just your attempt.
Yeah, no, it's per project. It's not intentional.
Operating system is applying yellow extra.
I think it is. Yeah, I'm just realizing that like it's actually the TV. It's cool on the monitor here. It's warm on the TV. It's cool on the monitor. I don't know why.
It's nighttime.
Yep, that would do it.
What was the effect of the store change, and then if you want to throw in any other things like you did some DLC?
Yeah.
Scary spiders.
Capybaras or anything.
I actually did. I did put the capybara in there. I was kind of surprised at how much the players wanted the capybara in there. I'm like, should I do it? And they were like, yes. I was like, okay. And then they were like, thank you. So it ended up being a good idea. It's literally just the default avatar, like the Stabby like character, but with a capybara head coming out of the hood. That's it. It's literally it.
Is there any chance you're gonna bring this to any other VR platforms?
Maybe.
I have Steam VR, not Meta.
I actually made a PC build for that demo Kura guy so he could use it for recording, and it wasn't too bad making that build work. It wasn't as seamless as I thought it would be, but it might end up being worth it, especially going into like the next couple of years if Steam VR really ramps up or PSVR 2 does. I've just heard some kind of not so great stories from developers who like went through the process of developing a PlayStation VR build. Like it wasn't really worth it for them in the end, so I haven't pushed really hard on that. But if that ends up, that market sector grows or becomes more lucrative, I absolutely would.
You can port it to AR.
Funny enough, because the development timeline was so long, there was a period in there where I was getting pinged by Meta reps being like, can you make an MR feature? Can there be an MR thing in there? I'm like, yeah, people stab people in their living room. Nothing wrong with that. Exactly. But yeah, just to what you said, Zach, just the challenge of developing with the store merge, that was really huge. I'm kind of lucky that I slipped in under the radar before that merge happened, because I still had some natural like placement on the store and viewing that really helped it for like the next couple months. And so I got really lucky with that because I know a lot of other like managed apps that had store releases after that just got washed away instantly. So I consider myself lucky that I got in right before that. But at the same time, I definitely feel like I lost eyeballs I would have gotten otherwise.
Were you able to see a dip kind of right as the search changed?
I was, but it's hard to tell if that's from it coming down naturally after launch or if it was from the change itself. So I'll never actually know if like how much of an effect that had or if it was just compounded from it naturally dipping after launch. But it did have a good amount of front page placement for a couple weeks after launch, which tells me that like it had some good placement even with the big merge, because I had like front page carousel, like it started off like right away day one on the very front, and then a couple days later I went to like slide 3 or slide 5. So like I'm glad I got it in when I did, because I feel like that helped it survive the wave a little bit more than other apps did.
They do your content packs bump you up?
Yeah, updates definitely seem to like bump up player counts, hype for it. People do more videos on it like during big updates. The easiest updates for me to do are those ones I mentioned where I just make those little codes. So like I will put together a new cosmetic for like the daggers or the sword or the player, and that'll take me a few hours usually. And then I'll spend like 30 minutes developing like the secret code that they input into like a secret ATM machine that's on like the multiplayer map. And then I'll spend maybe another 30 to 45 in Discord developing the cryptography like around that code to get players to like figure it out or guess it together. And so often they will literally hang out in private lobbies in Stabby immediately after like a new code drops, and they will try to figure out together based on my clues what the code was. So they'll go around stabbing NPCs, and then they'll dip into the secret room where the ATM machine is and start typing in codes and be like, oh, put this in, it must be this. And it's really fun for me to dip in there and listen in on those. And sometimes I'll pull out the cosmetic that they're like looking for, like, oh yeah, you guys are doing this code for this, and show it off and get them hyped up a little bit. It's always fun. I do this for fun for you guys. So the most recent code hunt that I put in there that they still haven't figured out, I posted like after Christmas. So it's basically it was a code hunt, and might be a little bit of a sensitive, but like it's a dagger skin that looks like a syringe, like a creepy like plague doctor medical syringe. And so the clue that I gave them was the emojis for like a koala, a bear, grape, up, down, whale, horse, and then the cryptic messages start at the beginnings, then you may search, but the beginning is at the end. So if you take the first letter of all those emojis and then do a Caesar shift cipher 3 letters back, it'll spell out the word hydrate. But then you need to swap out the letter H for the letter Z to make it Zydrate, which is the name of the illicit drug from Repo the Genetic Opera. And the release date of Repo the Genetic Opera is the secret code that they input in-game to get the syringe. They have so much fun with it, I promise.
Is this still streaming online?
Yep. Question.
Yeah.
Let's say Stabby launched today, post-store merge. What might you do differently leading up to launch?
Yeah. Honestly, I would probably do a lot more kind of what I did before, like just ramping up like on TikTok and stuff, where I used to be posting like 2 or 3 times a day on TikTok during the development process, leading up, getting people hyped and in the community. And so I'd probably do a lot more posting there to kind of get that hopefully natural surge of people finding out about it for the first time from there. Because that's the big thing I think I lost out on when I did launch, was just that people weren't hearing about it for the first time anymore. And so the algorithm wasn't carrying it as much, whereas if I'd had that momentum that hadn't been stopped before, I feel like it would have worked out a bit better. No, actually, I don't know why. I'm just a really awkward person when it comes to like body language. So as far as like doing TikTok dances with like Stabby Avatar, I probably should have. I feel like those videos might do well, and I do have like a little mirror in game where players can see themselves. So it seems like a natural fit. I just haven't done it before.
Yep. In a super hypothetical world where the TikTok app was banned in the U.S., how would you approach marketing this thing? Did you have success on any other social platforms, or
Yeah.
change your approach?
Yeah, so my original approach was through Reddit, which used to be like one of the kind of places of choice for VR marketing, and it's kind of gone down a little bit, but you can still get some good views from there. So I probably would have pushed a little harder like on Reddit, or maybe one of the other apps that like is kind of mimicking the function of TikTok, like Instagram Reels or YouTube Shorts. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Just yep. Try to just match what the young people are doing. I've got 4 kids. My oldest is 11, so like I'm not exactly like tapped into like the youngest generation, but like I kind of have an in of like what they like or like what they're on or what they're checking out. So it definitely helps to kind of have that inside connection to be like, hey, where are people seeing stuff or like hearing about these games nowadays, stuff like that.
Sounds like you've got an intern.
Exactly. Free intern. Yeah. Any more questions? Yep.
The game costs $9.99 on the store from what I saw.
Yep.
How'd you go about choosing that price?
That price was completely chosen by the publisher, and they based it just on the amount of content there was at the time. I feel like it's kind of a fair price, and that low price has made it a good impulse buy for some people. If I were to release it today, maybe I'd charge like $5 more, honestly. I wouldn't change it that much. But yeah, that was completely chosen by the publisher. I didn't push back against it at all. I thought it was fair. Yep.
Just a question, you're talking about you were like publishing on TikTok like twice a day. Did you set aside time to just like make content for that sort of thing, or was it?
Yeah, I would kind of stop working on it like an update or something and play with the community and just try to like find like cool shots from like hours of footage that I recorded to be like, okay, that'd be a cool shot to go with like this sound clip or something like that. I was spending a pretty good amount of time. Most of the time it would be recording the footage and then uploading it to my phone, and then I'd be like lying in bed at night like about to like pass out. I'd be like, okay, just editing one more clip and then posting and then going to bed like that.
So it was like habitually recording, testing, and then you had a lot of stuff to dig through when you needed it.
Exactly. Yep. Or taking footage that people had submitted for like contests or like to get roles and stuff, and like taking that footage. And I'd always give them credit too. I wouldn't just say that this is me, but like it helped having other people recording stuff too. Yeah.
And you said that earlier in development, like you didn't do enough game design.
Yeah.
Was it because there was not enough play testing, or something kind of came out in it during development?
Yeah. It was a really interesting combination of things, in my opinion. A big one was the way I envisioned the players would play the game was very different from how they actually played it. The biggest thing is I just had the NPCs like at the ground level, and that players would be punished if they were like visually seen by an NPC, and NPCs would literally go running, and you'd lose points because an NPC ran away from you and like escaped or whatever. And what ended up happening is players would not really care about that. They wouldn't care about losing points, or even if they died because an NPC escaped, there wouldn't be that mental connection between that. No matter how much like UI I would put in their face to be like, hey, you let an NPC escape, you failed. They didn't care really. So I had to kind of step back and strip that away, because the audience that I had, those Gorilla Tag kids, they weren't looking at this from like a traditional game perspective. They were treating it as a hangout app. So I kind of turned it into that throughout the process of development. Was it became a hangout app with very active things you could do, very active interactions, stabbing NPCs, getting shot by drones, playing tag, King of the Hill, slicing each other up, stuff like that. Those were all like interactions they could do, but at its base, Stabby kind of became a hangout app. And so if I had treated it like that from the beginning, I would have had a little bit easier time. And even now, the store has like natural tags that get added to your game just from what players search up and then click on your game. So they're not even tags that you added to it. And one of the biggest ones that Stabby gets grouped into, like it shows up in the store categories sometimes, is it gets listed as a hangout app. So socially stabbing. No. All right. Anything else? All right. Thank you. I was serious too. If you don't drink alcohol, I'll get you like a caffeinated beverage or something. First round at the, was it? The Yard House?
Yard House, yeah.
The Yard House on this.
Yeah, that's a good transition.
Netflix said ending 8:30, so well done.
Good timing. Yeah. What button do I hear, David? Thank you, streamers and future watchers and decoder people. No, nobody tell the Discord. In stream. Bye.
So how long do you think they're gonna hang out in the middle of our
So yeah, so